So now all we have to do is click start, and then we'll be able to see the graph show up on the screen. So what's gonna happen is the stimulator's gonna fire, it's gonna send a signal, our patient's hand's gonna jump, and then we're gonna get the recording on the screen. There it was. Okay. So what we have here is a mess on the screen, but that's okay. That's what we wanna see. We wanna see the red lines here, which represent the stimulator. We want to see the blue lines down here, which represent the EMG. You may notice that it's in milliseconds of time. We couldn't record this using a stopwatch. We needed the computer system to do that. What I'm going to do now is change the display. So I want to auto scale the waveforms so that you guys can see them better. And so now what we have here is a block that represents how much voltage we sent through the ulnar nerve, okay, at about 45 volts. And then along the bottom here, we have a waveform for the EMG, the muscle activity. So all we need to do now to get velocity is we need a distance divided by time. So the computer system's going to show us time. So at the top up here, we have delta t, which is the time represented. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my I-beam cursor, it's up at the top, and I'm going to highlight from the beginning of the stimulus. I'm going to go past the edge of that stimulation, and then I want to go all the way out until I see the first major peak for muscle activity. So it starts about right here on the graph, as we see the graph going up. Okay? And so we're going to measure that time. Now this is in seconds. So it says 0.02178 seconds, but of course we would want that in milliseconds to put in our data. So you move the decimal 3 places, 1, 2, 3, and so that comes out to be about 21.8 milliseconds. Okay. So now that we have the time for the experiment, we need to know the distance that the signal traveled to our recording electrode. This is the easy part of the experiment. So go ahead and remove the bar electrode. It actually has a nice indentation of where the bar electrode was placed. What I like to do is, to be consistent, we're going to do this on our second location as well. I'll just go from the center of the circle from the bar electrode, and then I'm going to measure out to the middle of the recording electrode. And the recording electrode is the red one. And so in centimeters, that measures about approximately 23 centimeters. So we have 23 centimeters that the signal traveled, and we have a time of 21.8 milliseconds. So now that we have the first location, what we're going to do is we're going to move the gel. So we're going to recycle it. We're going to move that down to a second stimulus point, and I think we'll add a little bit more. And then we're going to do the same exact experiment, but at a second location. So we can call the first location the S2 location, and this location is going to be the S1 stimulus point, and it's closer to the recording electrode. Okay, so go ahead and place that recording electrode into the gel. And then I'm going to go back onto the computer screen and do the same thing we did for the first one. So we're going to change the preferences. We're going to change it to continuous on-off recording. And then we're going to activate the stimulator to find the stimulation point. But before we do that, we have to make sure that we lower the voltage. So we don't want to start at the 45 that we left off at. So we're going to go back down below threshold. And then we'll go ahead and start the stimulator. Nothing will happen until we increase the voltage and get to threshold. So I'm going to go ahead and activate it. And now we're looking for the second stimulation point. Up the voltage just a little bit so that we can get a nice contraction of the hand, so that we get a good EMG on the screen. That looks great. Okay, so hold that there. What I'm going to do is go ahead and stop the stimulator. I'm going to change, actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to close this out so that we can get a new recording. So we don't want to save changes. We're going to go back to Pro Lessons, open up Nerve Conduction. Now everything's reset. So we have no graphs in the stimulator box, there's no graph in the EMG, and now we're ready to record again. So we're going to click start, and it's going to give us our stimulator and our EMG recording. There it goes. So now once again we have our second stimulator recording and our second EMG recording. We go to display auto scale waveforms. So that gives us now something to work with. We grab our I-beam cursor. We're going to highlight once again, and we're going to read the time under delta T. So I'm going to go from the beginning of the stimulator, and I want to go past the red, and I want to find kind of that first uphill right about there. And so we have about 18.5 milliseconds. Again, the time is in seconds, so I just converted it to milliseconds. And so what we'll do is we'll use the time difference between the two stimulation points, and we need a distance difference between the two stimulation points. So we'll go ahead and remove the bar electrode. We can see where the bar electrode was positioned. We're once again going to measure from the middle of that circle impression to the middle of our recording electrode, and it looks to be about 9.5 centimeters. Okay, so we have our two distances and our two times that we recorded, and if we're going to calculate a velocity, we need to know distance divided by time. So we'll be plugging our data into our equation so that we can get an accurate representation of the nerve conduction velocity.